Uh, Good morning. Good morning.
What's up, everyone? It's the Morning Deuce with D-Spin. We took a day off yesterday. Sorry about that. Some technical stuff, but we're back. I just got a check from my landlord for $17, and it's like totally throwing me off. 5 months ago, the fridge wasn't keeping things cold, and we told him, and then he had like an emergency fridge replacement, and he just did it without telling us when no one was here. I live with 2 other people, and so like a bunch of our food was just like put out and thrown out because the fridge people like came, switched the fridges, and then didn't switch the food over. And now, like 4 or 5 months later, he just wrote the 3 of us, like, we each have a $17 check. Like, what? Why even? I just don't even get it. Like, what the hell was the point of that? It was just, it came out of nowhere. I mean, I know, like, found money is pretty sweet, but just, like, it just made no sense. I mean, I'm totally flabbergasted. Who gets like a $17 check out of the blue that I was never thinking about? Like, I just kind of was like, oh, the food is a casualty. Like, life goes on. It really made no sense to me. But I'm $17 richer than I was 45 seconds before the podcast. So think about that, everybody. Boom. First thing, we just have to talk about the ridiculous PR spin job by Donald Trump right now. So the world is kind of, well, at least the political world is sort of trashing Mr. Trump because Hillary Clinton's campaign, just for her, has $42 million on hand to spend, and Trump has less than $2 million. It's like $1.8 million. There's a candidate running for attorney general in like Alabama who has more campaign funding on deck than Trump, which I don't think is that dumb for a couple reasons. One, because he obviously got a late start on this whole deciding he was going to run for president and take it serious thing, but also I don't think he completely trusts the Republican Party. And when they invite him in, when they officially make him the nominee at the convention, he gets access to all of the funding that they have as well. And then I think he'll start matching it with his own funding. But in the meantime, I'm not really sure he wants to do that because I think he's still nervous they could pull some crazy 180 or something like that. So I think he's not investing money until he's guaranteed to match it. Ridiculous. But anyway, he's getting just tossed around on the internet about how she has, like, you know, so much more money for her fundraising than he does. And his response by Twitter, which you know that despite the fact he's running for president and like tens of thousands of people are going to his rally, he doesn't have an intern running his Twitter account. I mean, he has like 60 people on his campaign team. Clinton has 700. She has people running her Twitter. You know it's just him like smashing at a keyboard on the top of the Trump Tower. But he said, my fundraising for my campaign is we're running a leaner and more efficient campaign, something like the way our federal government should be run. I mean, that is, if that's, I'm pretty sure he just called Hillary Clinton's campaign fat somehow. Like, you say, oh, I have $42 million, I have $1.5 million. Well, guess what? Like, it's amazing that he can just walk into a debate and be like, I'm worth billions of dollars. None of these guys are worth anything. I've employed tons of people. None of these people have. Like, look at all this stuff I have, all these golf courses, like all this money. And then also somehow like 10 minutes later when he has less money, say, I'm running a leaner and more efficient campaign. I mean, he's just like, I don't even know how this stuff comes. That's amazing. Like, somehow he made Hillary Clinton look bad and like feel bad for having money behind her campaign. And like, essentially, I think he called her campaign fat. Like, it's amazing. Amazing. We got to go to Brazil right now, to Rio. This is a harsh turn, but I've been steadily on the Olympics are going to be a disaster bandwagon. I've tongue in cheek said it's ridiculous that an area with a festering epidemic that is Zika, that's transmitted by mosquitoes and sex, is going to play home to the Olympic Village, like the most sexually active place in the world. I didn't think it was a good idea. I thought that was crazy. Not prude or anything, just being pragmatic. You put a bunch of people in an overnight camp for adults of the most athletic fitness body types of all time. They're going to come. It's not good. It's not a good matchup. Well, now Rio is falling apart in tons of other ways. And in their torch ceremony that they just had, they brought a jaguar to the torch ceremony, I guess. And even though the EPA of the country never approved of it, they just decided to do it, to have it there as a symbol. It somehow escaped from its leash, ran through the zoo there or something, ran away, and they shot it with a tranq gun, and it didn't slow it down enough. It said it was attacking a soldier, although I've seen some reports that it just kind of got close to a soldier, and he just took out a pistol and shot it in the head. So, and meanwhile, the Olympic Committee was like, the Olympic torch is a sign of freedom and equality and global harmony. We shouldn't have had an animal that was endangered chained to by a leash, chained up, and then have the possibility of escape and shot. Those two things don't work harmoniously. This was a poor choice. You think Olympic Committee? Dude, the Olympic Committee just makes dumb choices after dumb choices. The entire Russian track and field team is suspended from the Olympics because they tested so positively for drugs that they're just a completely corrupt organization. And they test the athletes, they test 2-3 years later, they retest again, and everyone's on steroids. It's just there's so much money involved, just like everything else now. It's been monetized where what was a friendly competition or some type of intense competition and has so many socially impactful moments, I feel now is just this weird money situation. It's And then Rio's a mess. Usually the cities that host these events do not make money. They build all these facilities, spend a ton of money, and eventually lose in the long run. They're just hoping for tourism. In Brazil, they had a sniper just showing up and was shooting from an overpass, some type of semi-automatic weapon, just shooting it while cars were going by this overpass, which is where I guess during the area that driving is going to happen during the Olympics. There was a building raided by 300 police officers recently because it had become a drug dealing and crack den. And there were explosions and a bunch of people were killed in it. They're just raiding buildings of homeless drug addicts and just killing people to clean up the city. It's crazy. I don't get it. It seems like we should be able to press a pause button and push it back a month or two or something, or figure out a way to make this happen, because I don't think anyone's excited for the Olympics. I don't think Rio is. They're probably pooping their pants. The Olympic Committee can't be excited. The athletes can't be excited. No one wants to go to the games. The water is poop, dirty feces water. The athletes that have to sail and row and stuff don't even want to be part of it. It's a mess waiting to happen. I'm nervous about the Olympics. It's not going to be the shining star. If you are a very wealthy athlete who already has prestige in a sport beyond the Olympics, if you're an Olympic athlete and that's your sport, there's not much more to, let's say you're a fencer or something like that. The Olympic gold is what you live for. Track and field athlete, the Olympic gold is what you live for. But if you play basketball or you do something else where, you make a ton, or hockey if it's the Winter Olympics or something, you make a ton of money, I'm not sure the nationalism pride is enough in some type of event like this where I would even, really want to go. I might be I'm working on championships in my other sports. I got a ton of money. I have a family. I don't want to go to be in this, to be in what Rio is right now. It doesn't appeal to me. That's the end of part one. For part two, it's a little heavier. We're just going to talk super briefly about gun control, and not whether it's positive or negative, but just what happened. There was a 15-hour filibuster by Democrats to talk about gun reform For 15 hours, they gave speeches in Congress and Senate to prolong the vote so that they could draw attention to it. There were 4 measures up for vote on Monday about gun control, and all of them didn't pass. And it's not just the Democrats or just the Republicans who are doing it. They both voted against each other's bill. Most of the bills, 2 of them, were geared towards making it so people who are on terror watch lists and who are very well thought of as imminent threats of terror can't get guns. Like, intensifying gun control against people on a no-fly list and terror list shouldn't be able to easily get guns. And yet, I think even like the most intense Second Amendment gun rights protector doesn't want terrorists to have guns. I mean, that's everyone pretty much can agree on that. And yet, the nuances of these bills in the Senate, the politicians cannot agree upon them, despite the fanfare and the show of the 15 hours. They cannot agree upon them. They cannot figure out a way to put something aside and create something they can all agree on. And then once it gets past the Senate, it has to be approved in the House and vice versa, and they do the exact same thing there. It's just unbelievable why we can't do this. And I was just frustrated thinking, like, how come we can't make it harder for terrorists to get guns? Like, that's all we want to do. Everyone wants to do it. Let's just make it. How can we not get to this point? What does it take? And then I saw 2 posts on my Facebook wall that were back to back that were pretty crazy. One was this little girl standing on a toilet, and it's the post from the mom. And basically what she says is, I took this picture because I thought it was going to be funny and I was going to share it with my husband. And then I asked my 3-year-old what she was doing standing on the toilet. And she was practicing for a terror drill that they were going to have, like a lockdown drill at her preschool. And it's just crazy to think of that, like a 3-year-old standing on a toilet to protect themselves. It's crazy that that's like the state of a first world country. Like, that's a real thing. And then the next post was another one from someone I know who does like religious services. But they're typically like very open-minded. They're Christian religious services, but they're open-minded. And basically she was talking about how she was being asked to lead an interfaith vigil for what happened for the victims of the Orlando shooting at a Catholic church, and the church had told her they wanted her to lead the vigil, but they wanted to make sure that she didn't focus on the lifestyle of the victims, and that instead the tone had to be generally towards peace and not towards the actual victims that were attacked or why they were attacked or any of that type of sort of specific peace, only general peace. And I looked at those 2 things and I was just like, is this really, like, can we not agree on that these things are just terrible and they need to be changed? Like, a 3-year-old should not live in a world where they're being drilled at school to stand up on a toilet so that like an attacker would look and not see feet in a bathroom. Like, that's not something a 3-year-old should have to do. People giving a vigil religiously or otherwise, some type of memorial to people who died in a hate crime based on, an ethnicity or a sexual orientation or a race of people or whatever, should not be forced to or asked to ignore what those people's lifestyle was or choices were or ethnicity or race or sexual orientation in a memorial for them. Like, those things should not happen. That in itself does not promote peace. It just promotes like this weird fear of the unknown and like we can't talk about it type deal. Just not talking about it and making it like this unknown fear is just crazy. And I think we all can agree that like those things need to be changed. And I just can't understand sometimes why we can't. Those things can help to be changed if we can just maybe like somehow agree legislatively to make it more difficult for terrorists to have guns. I don't understand why that process is so difficult. And I know maybe that's from an ignorant standpoint because I don't know the nuances of everything that the Senate and Congress is dealing with. But I do know that has to change. Like, the way to make those things easier is open communication and harder for bad people to get guns. That's the two things. Those are the two things. Like we should make it, if you are on a no-fly list, it should be really like you shouldn't be getting a gun. That's it. That's all I got. I know this is a little political, a little more than normal. But it just makes you think, like, we get stuck on the nuances so much that I think we like miss the impact. And how, like, what is it, how do we figure this out? That change has got to happen, because this is just, we can't just keep cycling back into the same thing, back into the Senate, back to another bill, back to another thing, back to another partisan. And meantime, terrorists are getting guns, kids are living in fear, and we're ignoring like people's openness to a lifestyle of their choosing when we remember them because of this fear. It's all like a fear that just shouldn't exist. It just shouldn't. Fear is dumb. We're all going to end up in the same place. Fear is only important if it motivates you. We should be using whatever fear Orlando created as a positive motivation to not let it happen again. And otherwise, it's useless. Anyway, there's my little soapbox for the day. Morning Deuce, D-Spin, I'm out.